Hi, this is Chrissy Bold from the podcast Mom's Guide to Finding Herself. I joined the Online Business Academy for Podcasters because I needed help putting together a business that would be manageable for me to run while juggling my life as a stay-at-home mom to two toddlers. But I also wanted to help offset the costs of running my podcast. My favorite part of being in the Academy is how Adam helps me with all of my big ideas to bring them into bite-sized chunks that will help me grow a business that I can keep up with while avoiding burnout. His methods are easy to access and apply, and he's genuinely invested in making sure that the members of the Academy are getting value and working towards their goals.
Pod Pals, if you want some of my best podcasting tips, make sure you're subscribed to my free Podcasting Business School newsletter. Every Thursday, I sit down and write a fresh newsletter in real time without the use of any AI, and here's the best part. My newsletter topic is completely different from my podcasting topic each week. So if you want to join the 4,000 plus podcasters that are reading my Podcasting Business School newsletter each week, head on over to www.podcastingbusiness.school or just hit the link in the show notes. What's up, Pod Pals? It's your buddy Adam, and you're listening to Podcasting Business School. It's a show where I teach podcasters simple strategies to help you make more money with your online business. And today we're talking about a highly requested topic. It is what I'm calling my podcast to newsletter to social media content flywheel strategy. One of the most frequently asked questions I get is, Adam, how in the world do you create so much content with your show, your social media, with your newsletter? How are you doing all this? So the first thing I'll put out there is that I've got this weird superpower that gives me a unique advantage. Like whenever I take those like personality tests, strengths finders, Colby assessments, they always come back the same, where my measurables are very ordinary across the board, but there are two categories that really, really stand out. One is always creativity level. So I have a high creativity level. Duh, that's pretty obvious. But I also am very, very into organization, which that combination is strange. You know, usually you're either really creative and not so organized, or you're really organized and not so creative. But somehow I am both at the same time, which means I love creating systems and creating systems that I can kind of dump my creativity into. I create these systematic buckets that I can just pour creativity into. And the good news for you all is that when you consume content like today's episode, I am sharing that creativity system with you so that you can implement, or if you're in my Online Business Academy for Podcasters, I've got all these tools that I create to help kind of harness creativity. So you're connected to me, you can leverage my superpowers. So the problem that I really want to address today is that content creators, in my opinion, are making a mistake. And I made this mistake for a long, long time. I've recently fixed it, and I've noticed a big difference with how efficient I'm able to be with the content I create and the results I'm getting back from that content. So the mistake I think a lot of content creators are making is that content creators tend to talk about one core topic per week, and that is a core topic of their podcast and their newsletter and their social media. They're kind of talking about one thing all week long. And why I think this is a mistake is because I feel like this trains our audience to think that they only need to consume one piece of that content and then they're good. They've got the message. So let's just say you just have a newsletter and a podcast, and your podcast episode topic is the same as your newsletter. Your content consumers will think they only need to consume one or the other. It's a waste of time to keep consuming the same content, or if they see posts about it on social media, like, I already listened to this episode, I'm good. So we're training our audiences to only think they need to consume one piece of content instead of all of our content. They're not going to get educated by all of our content, so they only consume one piece. So my solution that I'm going to kind of unpack here today with this episode is to focus on creating unique and highly valuable content each week for each of your content pillars, uniquely valuable. So your podcast content, uniquely standalone valuable. Your newsletter content, uniquely standalone valuable. Social media content, uniquely standalone valuable, all not covering the same thing. There might be a little bit of bleed through, where you kind of talk about a similar topic, and content pillars are mixing and matching, but it can't just be like, it's all the exact same information across the board. We're not going to do that anymore. I'm going to walk you through this content flywheel strategy that I use each and every week, and it allows me to produce a mega ton of content that is uniquely valuable each week within each of those content pillars of my podcast, my newsletter, and my social media. So I am training you all as my content consumers to want to consume this podcast episode. And guess what? My newsletter on Thursday will not be on this podcast episode. And it for damn sure isn't just a promotion to go listen to this podcast episode. It'll be something completely different. And if you follow me, especially on Threads, I'm dropping tips 3 times a day over there that probably have nothing to do with what I'm talking about here today. So I'm training you to want to consume all those things because you're getting value out of all those things. That's the key thing. All right. So let's dive in here. The first step that I would like to engage with here is we want to make sure that your weekly podcast topic and your weekly newsletter topic are completely different from each other. Now, if you're not doing a newsletter, I'd highly recommend it. I'm really seeing a lot of power with the podcast plus newsletter strategy. And I think today's episode may encourage you to reconsider if you have decided to not do a newsletter. Now, one thing that I really want to kind of underline and emphasize is that obviously we want to have a podcast and a newsletter each week, different topic, but it doesn't mean that we have to create completely new content for each of these every single week. This is where the content flywheel starts to work its magic. So I'm going to give you some examples to show how this can be done. Let's say that you are a podcaster and you have 25 episodes of your podcast that are live right now. Maybe you got 47, maybe you have 470, maybe you have 147, whatever that is. But let's say you've got 25 episodes live, and you're going to start implementing this content flywheel strategy. And you have either got a newsletter, maybe you've just been using it to promote your current episode, which is what most of us have done for a long time. So that's okay. But you're going to start doing a different topic because I've convinced you. All right. So you've got 25 episodes live of your podcast. For this week's newsletter, I want you to go back about 20 episodes of your podcast and pick a show topic that is completely different compared to the show topic that is being released in your episode this week. So if you have a social media marketing podcast and this week's episode is about leveraging Instagram, and we don't want to cover that same topic, obviously, in the newsletter. So go back about 20-ish episodes ago. I want about 20 weeks worth of content in the rewind, and pick a topic that isn't on Instagram. All right. And we're going to take the episode notes from that episode that's about 20 weeks ago, and we're going to create a newsletter about that topic. All right. So example, this week's podcast episode obviously is about my content flywheel strategy. I will find when I'm ready to write my newsletter this week on Thursday, which I write it in the moment every single Thursday. When I sit down to write on Thursday, I will make sure I cover a topic that isn't the same as this. But the way I'll do that is I'll go backwards in my podcast feed about 20 to 30 episodes ago and find a topic that's different than content, strategies. I'll talk about maybe podcast growth or creating offers or something like that. And I've already got notes for that show, and I'll just use those notes and I'll use those as my notes for my newsletter. All right. So I'm not creating brand new podcast content and brand new newsletter content every single week. We're leveraging this flywheel system. Now, I know the question will pop up, but what if you don't have that many episodes, or what if you're just getting started with your podcast? I've got you. All right. Simple. Here's what I want you to do. If you have less than 10 episodes, if you're just getting started with your show, or maybe you want to do this anyway, maybe this just feels better to you. What I want you to do is map out about 30 solo episode topics. So just think 1 through 30, number them, and go, okay, here are 30 solo episode topics that I could talk about as solo episodes on my podcast. So let's say you're sitting down to write this week's newsletter. I want you to start at topic number 20 on your list. And then when you create your next podcast audio solo episode, start on topic number 1 on that list. So now it's almost the reverse. You're going to be talking about the the content on your newsletter before it's going to come out on your podcast. And that's okay too. So we've got several months of separation here. And I've tested, okay, is it better to have 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 16 weeks? For me, it's in that 15 to 20 or even longer amount of separations. I've got lots and lots of content, so I've got that advantage. But I think in that 15 to 20 week range of, okay, I talked about this on the show. Now 15 or 20 weeks later, I talked about it on the newsletter or vice versa. I feel like that's going to work pretty well. For me, I've got 578 episodes as of today. And what I've been doing is I've just been going backwards in my feed. I kind of went 20 episodes back and I've just been working backwards. So I've got 500 and something episodes to work backwards through. So I'm good for the next several decades, I believe, of my my newsletter. So there's different ways you can attack this. The key principle is we want to use old podcast episode notes to create new newsletters. And here's the cool thing. If you guys are on my newsletter and get my Thursday newsletters, like it's not just bullet points and notes. Like I write a lot different than what I speak on the show, and it comes off differently. And I always get new ideas, and it's been 15 or 20 weeks since I created that content. So there's always new ideas and new layers and new flavors and new herbs and spices I can sprinkle onto that content. So it's refreshed and it's often better. All right. So I just don't want you to feel like, oh, it's rinse, wash, repeat, or whatever. It's the same stuff over and over again. And I'll challenge you to make sure it is not like that. All right. Just use the bones of your episode notes and go, okay, here's the topic. Here's some notes. Let's kind of flush this out via written format in a newsletter. And let's see what new piece of content appears and is created out of that. All right. All right. So that's goal number one achieved. Goal number one in this flywheel is to have podcast content that is used for future newsletter content. All right. The next step of the flywheel is to turn newsletter content into social media content. And this is where I save a ton of time each and every single week. I wasn't going to talk about this. I'll just briefly mention it, but I got one of the biggest compliments I've ever gotten in my life last week. I had a person that accused me of lying about not using AI in my content creation because, again, I won't get into it, but they basically were like, BS, Adam uses AI. He's lying about it. I took that as a compliment because what the heck do I have to gain by saying I don't use the AI and then use it in secret? Like that doesn't make any sense, first of all. But I was just like, no, my stuff is actually that damn good. And I really enjoy creating content. But I think the thing that was setting them off was like, how is this guy creating so much stuff without the use of AI? It was almost like incomprehensible to them. I had a little bit of back and forth in the DMs, and they end up getting blocked. Spoiler alert. My block finger is strong right now on social media. I'm like, I can't deal with this. It's negative, block. But like, that's the power of this system, is you can turn it into a ton of really good content. So we're spending time creating our podcast content, which turns into really great newsletter content, which turns into really great social media content. All right. So let's go through this next step, turning newsletter content into social media content. The first step in this process is each week I copy and paste my newsletter text. So I write it on Thursday in real time, and I copy and paste it into a Google Doc, and then I carve it up. All right. So I scan through that. My social media platform of choice is Threads, which is a text-based platform, which really is great for this technique. So if you do a lot of text-based posting on LinkedIn, Twitter, Threads, even using it for just copy under Instagram posts or Facebook posts. So that's kind of where this is really going to help you out. It's going to really make a lot of sense. So I go through that newsletter text, and I just look for quotes. I look for lists. I look for bullet points. I look for quick hitting, like, ooh, that was an aha statement there. And I also create long form super threads out of almost the entire thing. So I'll carve it up. I call it my Thanksgiving turkey technique. I carve it up until I've used almost every piece of that text. And what I do is I save it in this Google Doc I love doing tabs on Google Docs, by the way. I'm addicted to that. And I'll just have each week, starting with the Monday. So it'll be like Monday, June 30th, Monday, July 6th, or whatever it is. So I'll have a tab for each week. And what I don't do is go, oh, newsletter, let's make this all next week's social media. I'll say, okay, clip number one of I said something good. I kind of cut that out and I'll paste it into 2 weeks from this week. Next one, I'll paste it into 3 weeks from this week. Next one, 4 weeks out. Next one, 5 weeks out. Next one, 6 weeks out. So if I got 10 things that I copy out of my newsletter to use on social media, that'll be spread out over 10 weeks. So it's not hammering my social media audience with this one single topic for an entire week. It's being spread out. And once you start doing this, and I save for threads, I save all my posts because all the ones that are winners that really hit, like I make notes of that and I reuse my winners. So I've got this volume of all these posts that I can reuse and use over and over and over again. I posted something today. It's the third time I've posted this. I've got about 400 new followers on threads from one post that I've posted 3 times. It just went. So, and that came from my newsletter. It was a clip from one of my newsletters that I just copied and pasted, put it on threads, took off, did really well, made a few little tweaks to it, did even better. And I'll continue to use that. So that's the power of this strategy. So again, I take my newsletter text, carve it up, save it over several weeks, and I'll use that in social media posts over the next several weeks. So that allows goal number 2 to be achieved of the newsletter content is now used for future social media content. And, I know a lot of you are in more video-based platforms, TikTok, Instagram Reels. You can use this same technique by using AI to carve up your video-based episodes and getting a ton of clips. So the underlying principle that may help everybody here is don't just post the same stuff over and over and over again from all different content pillars all at once, all in 1 week. Let's disperse it a little bit. That's a simple takeaway. All right. Now, overview. The first thing we're creating, this is the funnel. All right. The step-by-step funnel here. We're creating podcast episodes. Next, we're creating newsletters from old podcast episode notes and content. And the final step is create social media assets from newsletter content. And we're dispersing these over a matter of weeks, not all in one bolus of 1 week. That's a really important asterisk there. Do not release all the same topic content in 1 week. That's the whole point of this episode. Now, the big question that is lurking. Adam, what about the 72-hour rule? You're always talking about the 72-hour rule. A new podcast comes out. We got to promote it with 5 unique assets over 72 hours. Here's the deal. I still do this. All right. I still do this. And both of these systems can work at the same time. So this episode comes out on a Tuesday. I will still create 5 unique promotion assets to promote this episode. All right. But all of my other content will be about other topics. It's not the mistake again that most people make is, podcast episode topic. Let's do the newsletter that promotes that podcast episode. Let's do social media assets that all promote that podcast episode. And that's the strategy. And with this content flywheel, we're able to break out of that. All right. So when this episode goes live, I'll put up an Instagram story that has some sort of video or image, and I'll give people a reason why they should listen to this episode. The next day, I'll do a face-to-camera Instagram story that, again, talks about why people should listen to this episode. I will put up a Threads post that'll turn into a Instagram post that will talk about an overview of this episode and give some takeaways, and then say, hey, if you want more, dive in here. I will mention this in my newsletter. In my newsletter, I have the main topic that's a totally different topic, but I've got like a little quick hitter at the end, a little section of my newsletter that's like, hey, here's some content that may be of value. And one of those things is this week's podcast episode. All right. So I'm still getting those 5 assets out there. It's still a part of the core strategy, but it's not this one topic hammering our audience over the head with it. Everywhere they turn, they're getting hammered with this one topic. We're training them to want to consume all of our different content pillars, our podcast, our newsletter, and our social media, because they are getting massive value in each of those 3 content pillars. That's the key thing we're talking about here today. Now, I've mentioned, you know, this newsletter process, this content flywheel. It's fairly involved, and I think most of you can definitely pick up and go, okay, I think I get what he's talking about here. I think I could do this. If you need help with this, I've got videos where I break all this down. It's all inside my online business academy for podcasters. I've got trainings on this. I've got an entire module on how I do my newsletter strategy, how I carve up things, the whole thing. So I'll put the link to do a 10-day free trial inside of the episode notes there. But this is something that I really believe in. It's going to give you that content flywheel superpower, and people will be maybe accusing you of using AI. I mean, and again, I'm not anti-AI, and I think there's a lot of you out there that will actually go, hey, I could use AI to even multiply this. Go for it, Pod Pals. Go for it. All right. I want you to take this, build upon it, make it useful for your own systems, for your own brand, and for your own content creation pattern. And you do you. All right, Pod Pals. So that is it for this episode. Hopefully this added some clarity to your content creation strategy, and I hope that you give it a try, because I think it'll produce great results for you. And with that, Pod Pals, I'm going to send you out into the world, wishing you health, happiness, and many downloads. I'll see you next week. Hey there, good looking. Just a quick reminder to hit that link in the show notes and get signed up for my free Podcasting Business School newsletter. I'm going to send you a fresh, hot newsletter every single Thursday with some of my best podcast launch, growth, and monetization strategies. Hit that link in the show notes and keep your eyes on your inbox.